Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to the opposition's Sunday morning press conference, where we deal with the critical matters affecting the nation at this time. This morning, joining me is my colleague and former Minister of Government, Dr. Rudal Munilal. Dr. Munilal will also be addressing some of the issues that has arisen over the past couple of days. But first and foremost, I want to deal with some of the areas that I shadow inside and outside of the Parliament. Against the backdrop of yesterday's front page, Ghost Prime Minister on the Newsday, where we have ministers of government who are missing in action, who continue to demonstrate their lack of competence to deliver goods and services to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Today's front page of the Sunday Express, out of gas, when I first took a look at it, at a cursory glance, I thought they were referring to the government. Because the government, they too have run out of gas. They are the ones who have the country in the situation that it is in. But as if things could not have gotten any worse than what it already is, with murder, mayhem, flood devastation, several parts of Trinidad in the south, the east, and along the peninsula is without fuel. And you ask yourself, how did we reach this situation? When you read the article presented and the revelation, the startling revelation made by the Trinidad Express today, when you read this article and you are told that Mayaro, Rio Claro, Naparima, Moruga, Tabaquite, Princestown, Cedros, Labre, that these parts are without fuel because of the gross incompetence and the poor management by NP, who's a state agency under the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, it is a frightening situation that has developed. Because these parts of the country are essentially now going to be cut off. These people who live in these areas are now trapped, like those pariah divers left at the mercy of these state agencies that just seem not to care. What caught me by surprise were the comments made by the CEO of NP this morning as it relates to the gas shortages that are affecting these areas. And it will not just be these areas, as this will have a ripple effect across many other parts of the country. But what surprised me was when the CEO of NP, when asked by the Trinidad Express to elucidate on this matter, the CEO said that this situation has not reached critical point, and therefore they did not feel compelled to share anything with the nation. This government clearly has a communications problem. The Minister of Energy, the deafening silence on this particular matter will not be tolerated by the opposition and by the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, when the CEO of NP can say that they have nothing to say to the population because it has not reached critical stage, we are asking the question then, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for more people to die like what happened in Paria? Like what happened in Princestown when a fire appliance could not reach parts of the country? Similarly, when fuel cannot reach parts of the country, people are trapped in these areas. And we are asking NP, and we are asking the Minister of Energy. This matter falls squarely not on state agencies, but on the Minister and the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, who owes a responsibility to open your mouths and say something. Continuing to remain silent with the hope that the critical matters affecting the country will go away. is a situation that cannot continue to be tolerated. This government must be held to account, and this situation is an untenable situation where we will see the consequences over the next few days. One of the suggestions, and I spoke with former Minister Kevin Ramnarine this morning when I saw this article, because it affects my constituency, it affects many of the south, the eastern, and along the peninsula, those constituencies, of what could be done in the short term and the medium term. And the Minister of Energy must come out today from the Balisay Convention and put the needs of the people of Trinidad and Tobago ahead of the needs of their party supporters. And the minister must indicate whether or not the government has engaged these smaller contractors whose vehicles can go into these areas with light, smaller vehicles to supply fuel. Has government engaged these smaller contractors? What are the contingency methods that have been put in place to deal with this situation as it relates to what is happening along the eastern seaboard in Mayaro and Manzanilla? Has the government considered sending a barge down to Galeota with fuel, where you send the empty light vehicles into these areas, you collect the fuel at the Galeota point, and then you do the distribution? Has government considered those things? Not one word has been said by the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries on this matter. What about the road rehabilitation in these areas? This morning we are seeing the Minister of Works and Transport touring Manzanilla and Mayaro, saying that they will come up with temporary relief measures through bridges, etc. But there are no timelines. When faced with a very similar situation in 2014, under Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Minister Suresh Rambachan, we took immediate steps to get the geotechnical work going. But also we provided the country with a timeline that in the shortest possible time we were able to restore these access points so that emergency vehicles, as well as in the area of the oil and gas industry down in Point Galeota, could have been accessed, apart from agriculture, the economy, and other areas utilizing that space to get from one area of the country to the other. But Minister Rohan Simran has not provided any timelines this morning, and those are the things that we want to hear about as it relates to this out of gas front page. How much longer are these people who are devastated by massive floods across the country going to suffer? It is like adding insult to injury, as we say in local parlance. So I want to move on from that issue, but we are calling on the Minister of Energy and Industries to break his silence. As I've said, the government has a communications problem. When the CEO of NP, who's the mouthpiece of the government, can come out and say, well, they are waiting until things progress before they say anything to the country, then we know we are in a very, very bad state of affairs. And the Minister of Energy must lift his voice today and say exactly what is being done to remedy this situation. A few days ago, the Trinidad Express made another revelation. And that revelation had to do with a leaked business plan that has been sent to the Regulated Industries Commission. The Regulated Industries Commission is a body charged with reviewing rates as it relates to water and electricity under the public utility sector in our country. That leaked report has not been denied by the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So therefore we take what has been printed and the lack of denial coming from the government as truth and fact. I want to ask this morning several critical questions as it relates to that leaked report that has gone to the RIC. You see, for the past year, we have been asking this government whether or not they have removed the subsidy on the natural gas that is sold to TNTEC from NGC. As it relates to electricity production in Trinidad and Tobago, TNTEC purchases natural gas from NGC at a subsidized rate. The Subcommittee of Energy of the Cabinet determines the rate at which NGC will sell the natural gas for production of electricity to TNTEC. In the past 7 years, TNTEC has a debt of $2 billion to NGC. When the People's Partnership was in government, we ensured that that relationship between NGC and TNTEC was not allowed to get out of hand. And therefore, TNTEC was always able to pay its bills to NGC for the supply of natural gas. What we have been seeing happening over the past 7 years is that $2 billion debt that has been racked up by TNTEC is because of the fact that they are not paying their bills to NGC. But the reason that TNTEC is in the position that they cannot pay its bills is, Dr. Mulial will tell you, when we receive the estimates of recurrent expenditure and you look at the ministries and state enterprises, you will notice that in almost every ministry and state enterprise over the past 7 years, millions of dollars are outstanding in payments to TNTEC by the state. And therefore, the biggest debt owes to TNTEC is the state. And what the government has essentially done, the government has driven TNTEC into the ground. That today, $2 billion is owed to NGC because TNTEC has millions of dollars owed to them by the state. And that is how we arrived at that $2 billion. So no amount of playing smart with foolishness will dispute the fact that the reason why TNTEC cannot pay its bills to NGC today is because of the state and the actions of the state. To this morning, we are asking whether or not in whole or in part government has removed or intends to remove the subsidy in terms of the pricing that NGC sets to sell natural gas to TNTEC at. I'll tell you why that is important, or why we have been asking this question, and probably why the government has been so silent on this matter. It is because that directly impacts what the RIC will take into consideration when reviewing these rates. The RIC has to go through a three-pronged process. One, they receive the business plan or business model from WASA and TNTEC. Once they receive that, then they evaluate. There are certain criteria that they will look at in terms of productivity level, in terms of supply, and whether customers are happy in terms of the service and the delivery. And also the third and final approach would be, and this is the criteria is set out in law, and the final prong of the three-pronged approach is the public consultations. And even when you look under the RIC and how much money has been budgeted for hosting of conferences, etc., which will encompass these public consultations, government has budgeted zero. When you look at this year's estimates under that line item for those public consultations, is zero. So is it that the intention of the government through the RIC, and let us get this clear, government will give you the impression that the RIC is independent. Well, they are supposed to be independent, but we saw what else happened with the Police Service Commission. They too were supposed to be independent. Government determines who are the directors that sit on the RIC. They inform the policy in terms of what the RIC will look at and in terms of the criteria that they will use to determine the rates. So again, let us not play smart with foolishness and think that these people are really independent. They are the implementing arm of the state being directed by the Cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, because it is the Cabinet that appoints the members of the RIC. And therefore the RIC, having received that business plan, we are being told in that leaked report that over the next 5 years, what you would see happening is that the residential rates will move and increase, by 65%, 65.8%. For commercial customers, it will go up to 127%. And what you will have happening with those rate increases against the backdrop of high crime, against the backdrop of low productivity in the country, what you would have happening is that people will be unable to sustain themselves to be able to pay these rates. This is against the backdrop of massive unemployment in this country, where cost of living is so high, and government is moving full speed ahead to implement increased electricity and later down the road water rates. And we have warned this country time and time again that living in Trinidad and Tobago will become so unbearable because now it is affecting your pockets and it's affecting your homes. So this morning we want to ask whether or not that subsidy, because the leaked report that has gone, the business plan model that has gone to the RIC, speaks specifically to the subsidy, but it only says that for now government, in terms of the present, that government is funding the subsidy. It does not say what will happen when the new rates kick in to the year 1 to year 5. The second thing is that they speak about a customer charge, where if TNTech has to go into communities, they will now charge you a service charge, a customer service charge. Again, we are not being told of how this service charge will be calculated. In many of our areas, I know in my own constituency, which is a rural constituency, it is very difficult to get public utilities to go into these areas. And what is actually set out in the business plan, it says, and I don't know if these people don't read these things before they actually print it and send it into the RIC or make it public. But in the black and white, what it says is that even though you do not receive electricity, that once they go in to these communities, you still have to pay the service charge, even though you're not receiving a service or a supply of electricity. You still have to pay for these trucks to go out to check if something is wrong with your light pole, if something is wrong with your connection. And just like this government, totally out of touch, totally out of sync in terms of what is happening on the ground, what has been submitted to the RIC, we are now saying that government must hold their hands. The RIC must hold their hands with respect to going and moving forward with the increase in electricity and eventually water rates. So this morning, I've shared with you what is happening through TNTech, at TNTech, what is intended to happen at the RIC, and I'm encouraging citizens to lift their voices, because you will have the opportunity for these public consultations. And Imber told you he raised the gas prices 3 times and you didn't riot. This is your opportunity to register your disgust and your dissatisfaction with what is happening with respect to the cost of living, because now it's impacting directly on your pockets. So I'm urging citizens to go out there, engage in these public consultations. And I want to send a warning to the RIC as well. When we look at the budget estimates and we see that nothing has been budgeted for these public consultations, we will not accept that you tell the citizens through a suggestion box to write in and tell us what is your thoughts. And so you must go out into the community, say that is part of the law, the criteria set out in the law, and you must go out there and listen to the voices of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because what is happening is that you will now have people who are paying electricity bills today. Some of you, when your bill is $100, when they raise the rate, it will now be $165. Where are you getting the additional $65 from? When you already cannot pay your grocery bill, because every Monday morning flour is going up, basic essentials, rice, oil, sugar is going up. A bill that used to cost $500 today will now be $825 if we allow these rates to escalate. A bill that usually costs $1,000 will now cost $1,650, $1,650. And listen, they're not starting with 2 and 3% in terms of the increase. In your first year, should these increased rates be allowed to happen, you will be asked to pay an increase of 30% in your first year. In the second year, 16.5%. And these are large jumps for people who work in supermarkets, who work in stores, who already have to pay a rent, who already have to send children to school, groceries, etc., and face the hardship that the country is already in the middle of. As I wrap up and I hand you over to Dr. Munilaal, there's one other point that I want to raise this morning, and I see all media houses are carrying this foolish, dotish rhetoric of the Minister of Finance of a surplus of $1 billion. This is a country where our debt to GDP ratio is at 85%. 85%. Our public sector debt is the highest it has ever been in our nation's history. You couple that with, and this government, the same Mbert told us when the PNM came into office that the People's Party should max out the overdraft. That was a complete lie. That same Mbert today, on 2 occasions, has increased the borrowing ceiling as it relates to the overdraft. And then you come to tell the country of a $1 billion surplus when you are suppressing spending in critical areas like public utilities, social development, national infrastructure, to register that there's $1 billion surplus. The only people who believe that hogwash is Colm Mbert and Keith Rowley. Because the rest of the country, we do not experience, we do not feel that. Because you're suppressing spending in the country in an attempt to register growth and put forward a propaganda that there's a surplus in the revenue. When in fact, the country public debt is in the billions of dollars. You yourself continue to max out the overdraft and increase the borrowings. I think the last time, Dr. Munilaal, they came with the Andean Development Bank just recently. And while Mbert parrots this $1 billion, the country is sunk further and further and further into the sinkhole. And the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you are not feeling any surplus of $1 billion when you go to the supermarkets and you have to pay these increased electricity and water rates. You are not feeling any surplus of $1 billion because it is a reality that does not exist. And they're engaging in statistical conmanship to give these international credit agencies the impression that we are doing well. But despite how much propaganda Colm Mbert puts out about this $1 billion in surplus, the criteria used by these international rating agencies, every year Mbert comes with the same propaganda. The economy has turned around, we are booming. And when the rating comes out from Moody's and Standard & Poor's, etc., the proof is in the pudding, where they say to Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the world that the reality is far from what Mbert is telling Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the international community. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share with you. And we must remind ourselves that this is the same government who told us that they will not close down Petrotrade. Today, look at the situation that we are in with its express front page, out of gas. And a silence, a deafening silence from this government on critical issues with the hope that it will go away. But it will not go away, brothers and sisters. I now hand you over to Dr. Munilaal, who will deal with some of the more critical areas in the area of national security, etc. Dr. Munilaal.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament Barry Badarat, for a comprehensive overview of the crisis we face in relation to the provision of fuel and energy in the coming days in the aftermath of unprecedented flooding. And let me make it very clear, unprecedented flooding means the government's incapacity to provide drainage and infrastructure to deal with rainfall, whether it is seasonal or unseasonal rainfall, is irrelevant. The role of the government is to provide drainage and infrastructure to prevent this level of human hardship, property loss, and suffering. I would begin where Barry left off. On this matter, I like the term statistical conmanship in relation to that $1 billion, I believe, tune that Imbert is singing yesterday. I think the Express editorial of today sums it up well. It says here, in a classic case of deflection, describing Imbert's line, a classic case of deflection. Now, had Imbert been on the Calypso stage, on a stage to perform, his sobriquet could well have been the mighty deflector. I think that is really, he could be described as a stage name, the mighty deflector. Here we are, dealing with the issue of scanners and so on, and a crisis which I will deal with now. And he comes with $1 billion surplus. It reminds us of a case in a court, I think in a magistrate court, where a father came before the court for failing to provide maintenance for children. So the children had no food, they had no money for education, they had no shelter, they had no clothes, no pampers for baby and so on. And the husband came to the court and he said, all of that happened, true, but I was able to save some money. This is what Imbert is saying. Imbert is an abused political father, in a sense. You deny the country infrastructure, you deny the business community millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in VAT refund. So you deny infrastructure, you deny VAT refunds, you deny grants, you deny GATE to the university students and so on. You deny spending at all juncture on social expenditure. You stifle what is called expenditure suppression, spending suppression. You do all of that, create hardship, and then you have this evil boast that you save money. But you save money by suffering the country. And that is my take on this budget surplus matter. Because the business community is still crying for the VAT refunds. The children are still crying for education. They could not open a school in Princestown, one in Williamsville, one in Ramai Trace Davy. You couldn't spend the money there, but you save by pressuring, by suffering the children. That is how he's claiming. And that, I want to say with great respect, is almost evil and criminal to be boasting in that way. But it is a deflection from something else that we will come to now. Now, on Wednesday last, it was Wednesday the 30th of November, there was a Joint Select Committee on National Security, of which I am a part of that Joint Select Committee, along with Senator Jayanti Lakshmi-Dayal. And we attended the meeting and so on. Now, I want to first begin by saying the very fact that you have a Joint Select Committee on National Security, that very fact came about because of the revolutionary reform of the standing orders by the People's Partnership Administration. In fact, there would be no Joint Select Committee on National Security today had it not been for the Kamla Prasad Bisesa administration of 2010-2015. And we have now national security. Because previous to that, you would not even know, members of the press, you would not even know what the Comptroller of Accounts look like. You might not even know what the head of the BIR look like. But now we have a Joint Select Committee on National Security. Now, several things happened on that day which are bewildering, and we will get to it now. On that day, we were discussing the issue of illegal firearms in Trinidad and Tobago. We are told by the intelligence community, we have no reason to doubt them, that we have in this country in excess of 11,000 illegal firearms on the streets. Now, there's a lot of gun and high-powered weapons and so on, at a street value of 144 million TT dollars. So that is what is out there. The other revelation in recent times, which we again accept to be true, we have no other information. When we were growing up, we always felt that, illegal firearm and gun had to do with a box, a cargo box, and a wooden box floating on the beach late hour in the night, in the dark, particularly when it's not full moon and thing, and police coming on the beach and seizing and shoot out with traffickers and so on. Today is not so. We are told that this illegal gun, the majority come through legal ports. So they have no late night shootout in the night on the beach and so on with guns. It's really the legal ports, meaning your Port of Port-of-Spain for sea and the Piarco International Airport generally for air. So we are told that by itself is distressing. Now, we are also told another fact which we cannot doubt. 85% of the murders committed are by illegal firearms. So we put all of that to say things bad, things well bad. Now comes the bombshell revelation that we have no scanners. Only one scanner is working at the Piarco International Airport in the baggage area and so on. Now this is fascinating because I begin by saying that when we were in office, the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Prime Minister of this country, we received not one, but 4 scanners under Mrs. Persad-Bissessar. In 2012, we received a gift. It was in conjunction. I have the thing here. November 5th, 2012. Trinidad and Tobago to tighten border security. 3 mobile scanners for the ports of Port-of-Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. This was formalized in that time, 2012. Under the ambit of new technologies for the 21st century border enforcement, and 3 mobile scanners were provided in 2012. The scanners cost between 2 to 2.5 million United States dollars. These scanners provided on us. Now, this may sound unreal, but anytime the UNC is in power, there's the procurement of scanners. Anytime the PNM is in power, scanners don't work. That is a fact. Scanners don't work when the PNM is in office. As something happens when they're in office, that scanners don't work. So you have this situation, 3 mobile scanners in 2012, and then the Port Authority reminded us, in case some people might forget, that this scanner in the seaport of Port-of-Spain here, a $25 million NuTech linear accelerator X-ray scanner, indeed was provided to Trinidad and Tobago in September 2014. Again, under the People's Partnership. So 3 plus 1, 4 scanners obtained. Today, 1 working. All collapse, no maintenance. Some get obsolete, we are told. Now the controller, so that's the point then. The PNM has a problem with scanners. We also had a similar issue in the Port-of-Spain prison, which is another issue dealing with scanners. So technology is very important if you are dealing with illegal entry, guns, ammunition, drugs, and indeed human being, where you have human trafficking and so on. Technology is important. If you leave it to the PNM, they have no sense of technology. Their idea of screening is raising your hand and feeling around your waist and your legs and so on, They're still in that age where you rub down somebody to look for gun and so on. We are in the age where you have high-tech, super-tech technology dealing with scanning and that type of thing. So scanners not working. But 2 points made at the Wednesday meeting, which I think the country lost because it wasn't covered because of the gravity of the scanner having no scanners, where the Deputy Comptroller of Customs, one Miss Lewis, I believe, indicated to us that the staff establishment at Customs was 700, of which only more or less 325 are with human beings. So they have a problem that they're trying to manage the Customs and Excise Division with 50% of their establishment. So there's a crisis with staff. Now you know what else she said there which nobody covered? She said that staff establishment of 700 was assessed way in the 90s. Almost 50 years ago, 700 was required. But today it is much more. She says to us, if you do an assessment now of what is needed in the modern world, given the openness of the economy, given the trafficking, given recent issues with global trafficking in guns, human trafficking, terrorism, etc., she says we have to reassess whether 700 required in 1992 is required in 2022. So, but out of the old figure of 700, the Customs have 50% of that. This government has done nothing, absolutely nothing, to increase staff. And we are told, and we have a commitment from Customs, that they have written over the last 7 years or so to the line minister, Mr. Imbert. He hasn't changed, regrettably. They have written to him on several occasions, we are going to obtain the letters from this comptroller and others before her to show the public that this government has done nothing to increase the staff complement of customs officers and related professionals. So there's that crisis. There's another matter that came out, and this is what the point I want to make is that we had Minister Randall Mitchell and I believe another minister from Tobago, and another editorial dealt with it. Misplaced scanner outrage, Express again of December 3rd. Misplaced scanner outrage. Now the point the Express make, which I am making, is that these ministers express outrage. How could customs be operating like that? We fell down. Minister Mitchell was so crass as to ask the comptroller on live television, do you have any family who died from firearms? Do you have the care? Minister Mitchell, look in your cabinet. Look to your prime minister. Does the prime minister care? Does the minister of finance care? Because the comptroller told us that they have written, they are trying to get 4 new scanners and they are getting the runaround. The permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, which is under the Minister of Finance in Bert, we are told that the Ministry of Finance told the comptroller that, listen, if you have to procure scanners, do it through Central Tenders Board. But national security assets and equipment are done through the National Security Council by what is called sole selective. Because these scanners we are talking about, this is not a microwave that you buy in. These are serious pieces of equipment that require maintenance, and really the specifications are known to a few major players. This is not that you're going to buy 100 microwave and every shop could supply that, so you tender. These are done by sole selective. National Security Council that could have implemented a team to investigate Gary Griffith and legal firearm, they could not jumpstart this crisis by providing for a sole selective process to obtain scanners in an emergency. They said go to CTB. CTB will take them a year, 2 years. By the time you come out with a tender, the technology changed, the company shut down, no new problems. So the point I'm making, and it reminded me of a book that a colleague drew to my attention, which I'd looked at sometime before, How Democracies Die, What History Reveals About Our Future, by Stephen Ledvinsky and Daniel Zipla, 2 Eastern European writers, 2018 publication. This book tells a story that democracies don't die suddenly by a massive heart attack. They die over a period of time with small little cuts, surgical small cuts where institutions are destroyed, where the independence of institutions are destroyed, where important law enforcement entities are undermined. This speaks to the issue of state capture. And today I state boldly, without any fear and any reservation, that the state of Trinidad and Tobago has been captured by drug lords, by gang leaders, and by a political elite, high government officials, which the very Commissioner of Police told us. This week in a statement, the Commissioner of Police told us, he says, everybody blaming me, everybody, but there are persons. He insisted there continues to be complicity by people in high office and questioned why there's no call for their removal. So the Commissioner is telling us that people in high office are complicit in this matter of illegal firearms. So do you understand now why nobody wants scanners to work? Nobody wants scanners to work. Nobody. And we do not blame the Comptroller of Customs or the Customs. They are begging for staff. They are begging. They said they have $90 million approved for scanners. But the process is taking long through CTB and the Ministry of Finance. They go through that process. But to buy boat, to buy all the Coast Guard vessels, they want to hurry to buy from Australia. You know, they had no CTB there. They went straight to the National Security Council, get approval, money pass. But for scanners, go through the long road to get scanners. That is PNM governance, because the state has been captured by gang leaders, drug lords, the narcotic traffickers, human traffickers have captured the state of Trinidad and Tobago to the extent where they determine now whether scanners work or not. And I'll make that case in another point relating to scanners now. Let me make another case. Trinidad and Tobago, are you aware, members of the press, that this country, the TTPS, purchased, when Gary Griffith was commissioner, 2 mobile scanning devices to be placed on vehicles. We own, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the people own, at a cost of almost $25 million each, so 50 million more or less. We own 2 vehicles, and they can put up the pictures of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service vehicles that are equipped with scanning, equipment for modern day scanning. And I can show you, because I have to show myself too, these are the vehicles, TTPS, owned vehicles, there. This is the capacity they have, this is it. They can, it's an X-ray of vehicles on the road. They X-ray vehicles on the road. This is it. Owned by the police of Trinidad and Tobago. They see through vehicles, so to speak. You can, you're sure this is TTPS from Trinidad and Tobago. Look at number 2. We're giving you the registration number. This is it. In that vehicle, you have the equipment. It is purchased by the TTPS for 50 million TT dollars. This is what it can do. Show you an X-ray to see guns, to see drugs, to see if somebody is being kidnapped and they are folded up in the trunk or in the back of a tray van. You will see them on this. Now, why are they not using this? Why are they not using what has been purchased? That is the question. And there's a small video that is available to us too, and Darren will bring it up. A video done by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, TTPS, showing them using the equipment. It has actually started being used. When we purchased this, the video is coming up. We'll take a look at the video, just 60 seconds more or less, and we'll look at it.
Firearms from non-illegal items. As you can see, the vehicles are in front scanning machine here. The scanning devices hooked up to the truck. And as the vehicle drive past, it will be scanned, and the officer will tell us if there's anything illegal in the vehicle. We will come outside, and the officer will do one search in the vehicle to see if anything illegal is found.
We have it. That is a video by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service showing in action their mobile scanners on vehicles. Now, when the 2 were purchased, the intention that one could be covert and one overt, meaning these vehicles can be disguised as a bread truck, a kiss bread truck, a sweet drink truck. It could be disguised as anything, and you park it or locate it in what is a hot spot where you expect, intelligence tell you a lot of illegal firearms are going in and out someplace. You just park it up there and you scan vehicles as they pass by. Why is the police not using this, which is already there? This is $50 million that is going down the drain. And you know what is happening here? It is a pattern by this government. It is the government at fault here. When we left office, we bought a helicopter. They park it up in Komoto, did not want to pay the lease, entered into a court arrangements where the helicopter in the night was taken back to the United States. This country, the taxpayer, paid millions of dollars in damages, which we will find out eventually. Here, because Gary Griffith buy 2 mobile scanners to use, and Gary Griffith goes under some problem with the Prime Minister and the ministers and so on, nothing but Gary Griffith buy is good. They say that's Gary toy. You can't use that, that's good toys from Gary. But in the world of technology, technology drives crime fighting. As I say, you don't have to hug up people around the waist and feel up the ankle and think to look for gun. You have technology for this owned by the TTPS and the people, paid by the people, but not being used. Not being used. And I call on the government today to tell us, is it that persons have vested interest in those scanners not being used? Is it that persons are controlling the police and the political directorate to determine that these scanners must not be used? Why? The police commissioner suggesting matters of health. These very trucks and equipment are used in 55 countries of the world, including the United States of America, where they use them for border patrols on the border. So when big trucks coming in, they can actually scan the trucks to know if it have illegal immigrants and whatever in those trucks. If you are snatching people across borders, those things parked disguised along the path, they actually look at every vehicle passing by. So they know to telephone radio police. They say, police, look, we have a suspect vehicle just passed. We believe human beings are being held in the back. Please stop the vehicle and stop and search. That is modern day policing. Why can't the TTPS use that? They tell us it's health and safety. These are X-ray type machines that are certified by global health agencies. That's why they come from abroad this way. That's why they cost $25 million too, because they go through rigorous testing at all points concerning radiation and exposure to this and exposure to that. So this is a very, very serious issue. We demand to know why those pieces of equipment are parked up at the traffic branch in Port of Spain, rotting. Eventually you have to open the back of that and put duck and chicken to hatch in a $25 million piece of equipment rotting at the traffic branch in Port of Spain, but will not be used. And we also hear from someone, they can't be used to inspect containers. Well, of course, they are not equipment for the ports, but if a container passes on the road, they will inspect the container. If containers are passing on the road with illegal substances and so on, let's say ammunition, let's say guns, they will pick it up. So that is a scandal of the highest order, that we have equipment in the country. It has been used already and now packed up under the guise of health and safety, and it can't be used at the port. What health and safety? Tell us. We need to get under this issue, because I'm afraid that our conclusion may be correct, that there are high, strong people in this country with political interests and close to the politicians, the ministers, and even people beyond, who determine whether scanners work or not, and they deliberately slow down the process of fixing or procuring scanners because they have an interest in that illegal trade that we know. Imbert now, the deflector, tell us, well, in Europe and America and so on, they inspect less containers than Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Imbert, you sure you want to compare Trinidad and Tobago with the European Union and the United States? To begin with, they have a different sophisticated level of law enforcement with their federal level, their state level. When they inspect containers, they target people, they target mafia, they target known drug traffickers, they target people who are in the business of trafficking in guns and ammunition, gun runners, so to speak. They target people, they have intelligence, they have 3 or 4 different tiers of law enforcement dealing with that. So don't compare us, that is as the papers say, comparing oranges to apples. Because in those societies and in those countries, law enforcement operate at different levels with intelligence, with interventions and so on, not like Trinidad and Tobago. The other point is, why don't you compare us to islands? Transshipment islands. Find an island in the Pacific. I don't know, Malta, Maldives. Find an island in the Pacific that is a gateway from Europe to America. We are a gateway from South America to North America. Find a small island that is a gateway island and compare us to that island and see how much containers they inspect, if they have to inspect at all, because they don't have this. And the final point, Mr. Imbert, tell me which state in the United States, out of the 52 or so, state and territories, Tell me which state has the highest murder rate in its history, like Trinidad and Tobago, so you could be making a comparison in terms of illegal guns. And illegal guns, Mr. Imber, the problem is we are transshipment point, and the commissioner reminded us Wednesday in that JSC meeting, he said the illegal guns are linked to narcotics and drugs. They go together. So when we have the scanners, because the other parts of law enforcement, this PNM promises border security, protection, authority, and so on about 7 years now. Anybody hear about that? So we don't have a proper system of law enforcement to deal with this matter. We need scanners and we need to inspect more containers. So it is outrageous that 19,000 containers in an 8-month period left the ports without inspection. And then you quarrel about 11,000 guns on the street. So I leave that there for now. And the only other issue I want to, Barry thankfully dealt with this matter of flooding and so on, so I won't speak too much to that issue. The last matter concerns a matter of the EMBDC, Estate Business Management Company. The Attorney General, in a convoluted and incomprehensible manner on Friday last, gave some figures concerning the EMBDC. Now, this Attorney General has apologized in Miami, he has apologized in Port of Spain. I fear that he will have another apology due, because he went to the Parliament under the cover of parliamentary privilege and raised a tonload of matters that are still before the courts, where they have not even determined the outcome in terms of the exact cost that the state has to bear. So the Attorney General is boasting $369 million saved in EMBDC legal matters. Mr. Attorney General, the biggest case here involved a company called Namalco. Are you aware in that matter the court is still computing, assessing payments on those projects that the government has to pay? So you're telling us that in one matter, and he's been disingenuous, and I'll deal with the Attorney General on one issue alone, the Namalco matter. There are many other matters we can raise, but we don't have all day to be talking here. The first issue, Namalco sued the state for $1.1 billion more or less. He's saying that it was reduced, and the court reduced it to $469 million, so the taxpayer saved all this money. Are you aware that of the 6 projects named in the initial claim, 2 were removed? So immediately hundreds of millions of dollars left. So it is not 1.1 anymore. That came down to about, let's say, 800 or 900 million. So you are being disingenuous. Surely you are aware, Mr. Attorney General, that 2 of those projects out of the 6 were removed from that particular matter and placed into another litigation matter. So 1. Secondly, of the monies that the court determined so far, the 460 million more or less, 2 projects are yet to be assessed. When they are assessed, that could go to 600 million. Then, because the state lost the matter, the state has to pay legal costs, not only of itself, but of Namalco. That is the next $100 million in legal and professional services and so on. Then there's the matter of interest. These are matters going on for years. We estimate that the cost that the state will bear in the Namalco matter is in excess of $800 million. So the Attorney General is wrong. And I believe he may well be in contempt as well to be going to the Parliament and declaring a final figure. I have it here, I took note of it. He declared a final figure in a matter where the court is still assessing through what is called interim payment certificates and related matters. The court is assessing projects. So the government at this stage, the government is not aware of how much they have to pay, but he's in Parliament telling us we save X amount and we save Y amount. When I asked him if he's aware of the legal costs that the Ministry of Finance and EMBDC undertook with this matter in excess of $130 million, he says he doesn't know, but he could check. He's not sure. He doesn't know. We know the legal costs. We know the lawyers. We know these lawyers who are linked to which chambers. We know them. We know how much money they collected in EMBDC matters. I can tell the national community that in the EMBDC matter, in one matter and one matter alone, they have spent in excess of $60 million. And I am not concerned with the other 28 matters that they're involved in. $60 million in the infamous cartel matter that they raised that cannot go anywhere. That cannot go anywhere. They have spent $60 million in what is called legal and professional fees. In the Namalco judgment, you know what is amazing? We don't have time to go through it. The court determined that the professional expert that EMBDC brought, to use the language of the court, they could not place too much weight in their evidence. Essentially what they do, they call people from England, pay them British pounds, hundreds of thousands, to go and dig up a road somewhere in Barrackpore to see if it used enough sand or gravel or something. When they went to court with that, the court said we can't place too much weight on that. So it was more weighty paying them in pounds than taking the road from Barrackpore. So that is the crisis we face with EMBDC. In time, our incoming government will tell the population how much money they have spent. We haven't even spoken about the British company led by Kate, called I think it's Edmonds and McMahon or something like that. They have gone with 45 million TT dollars investigating EMBDC. Every time the police tell them this, we have to close this, there's no evidence, they say no, we could find something because their contract has to be extended. That's what they have been doing. Fleecing a stupid Keith Rowley, Stuart Young and others with millions of dollars while they can't fix the Manzanella Road, the road in Mayaro. The whole country wash away because they took all the money for a political witch hunt. So the Attorney General, I want to alert you that you may have some legal letters coming your way, because you ought not to be stating as a matter of fact how much money the state has to pay while that is still before the court, while they have not even determined and assessed and computed properly with interest payments on certain projects. I won't name the projects because it is in the documents and so on. So those are some of the issues we'd like to raise today. MP Padarat was good enough to raise some of the flooding matters, so we don't go into that. And I'd like to leave it there unless we have some questions that take us elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Some questions coming in. MP Padarat, the CEO of MP has addressed some of the concerns you mentioned with regard to the fuel shortage in parts of the country. He said the reason why they can't get fuel to those areas is because it's simply too unsafe to do so. How will you respond?
I think the answers that have been placed in the public domain are insufficient. They are not properly thought out. While we do respect the fact of there is a level of risk to limb and life, there are other alternatives that can be considered. And that is what we are asking government to break their silence on. For instance, Mayaro has been totally devastated. Manzanilla, totally devastated. Rio Claro, parts of Princess Songmoroga, Tableland. And should government send a barge with that fuel to Point Galiota, where there's a port there, and then use light vehicles? And that's why I have asked whether government, through the minister, the minister is a policy decision maker on behalf of the government, not the CEO of MP. And the minister must come out and say whether or not they have engaged these small contractors who have these light vehicles, who can go in on these roads with empty light road wagon tankers. Go down to Point Galiota, send the barge down there with the fuel, service Manzanilla, Mayaro, take these vehicles, send them down into Rio Claro, send them into Tableland. Those are the sort of things that we want to hear in terms of bringing a measure of relief to citizens. It cannot be that we just throw our hands up in the air and said, well, it's too difficult. That is what costed 4 people their lives in Paria, you know, because they sat on their hands and they did nothing. Did not come up with any sort of contingency planning or thinking outside of the box. We live on an island. You can send a barge down there. There's a port. There's a ready port in Galiota. It doesn't take rocket science to figure out some of these things. So the excuses coming from the CEO of NP is an indictment on the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, who should really be driving some of the policy in terms of alternatives to bring about a remedy to this situation. Because a similar approach can be taken with respect to CDROS.
On Friday, the opposition tabled a motion in Parliament about flooding. At that motion, Minister Sinanan said that he refuted the idea that there were parts of the country that were covered. Do you think that he's perhaps unaware of the extent of the damage in cases like Mayaro?
I think the minister himself seems to be cut off from intelligence, because the minister could not provide any sort of comprehensive, cohesive answers in the Parliament on Friday. I think it was a debacle, really, to see a Minister of Works and Transport not being able to provide any sort of timelines with respect to the reinstatement and rehabilitation of some of these roads. I shared with you earlier, we faced a similar challenge in 2014. It really takes a hands-on minister, and Minister Johansson, no amount of touring these areas will bring a great measure of relief unless you don't put plans and policies in place. And that is what we've seen for the past 7 years. This country is riddled with landslips and potholes because of inaction. The minister is known to be inactive in his thoughts, but also in his actions itself. And we are seeing that manifesting in terms of not bringing about any measure of relief. So I'm not surprised by the utterances coming from the Minister of Works and Transport inside and outside of the Parliament.
The president of the Petroleum Dealers Association has expressed disappointment with the way in which the Ministry of Energy has handled this matter, and has come out and said that they would actually think that they are entitled to compensation from MP due to the violation of their contractual agreement. What would your comment?
Well, first of all, I said earlier that the government, and especially Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, because this is a pattern that seems to be developing, coming out from the Paria incident into this incident. The ministry has, and the government has, a communications problem. I will not want to venture my opinion with respect to the contractual arrangements, because we don't know exactly what are those contractual arrangements. I don't have that information in front of me, but I do share a level of disappointment. But I'll take it a bit further. It's not just disappointment. This is impacting on the day-to-day lives, the operations of this country. You still have 1 week of school. You still have emergency vehicles that require fuel in these areas. You still have people whose homes are flooded out, who cannot get any measure of relief, whether it's food supplies, cleaning supplies, etc. So the very lethargic, lazy approach taken by this government is being manifested in other areas. So you saw it in Works and Transport, and it's now happening in energy. So there's really no out-of-the-box thinking. So I share his sentiment, but with respect to compensation, I will not want to venture there, because we ourselves don't know the contractual arrangements exactly between MP and these suppliers.
Dr. Miller, with regards to this scanners on the port, at the Joint Select Committee which you were part of, some of the issues raised on the port were a lack of manpower, failure of maintenance, and so on. These issues seem like issues that could be easily remedied. Do you think that this is just a failure of proper management practices? Right.
Let me say, one of the overriding problems with this Rowley administration since 2015 is that they put square pegs into wrong holes and wrong pegs into square holes. That has been a problem, because throughout, whether it's the port or HDC or UDCOT or wherever, they always seem to put the wrong people. And when you don't have the caliber of management, a cadre of qualified persons with expertise and skills, you cannot manage a state sector. So that's one challenge. The other problem is the bigger problem, which I've raised this morning, is that I believe in terms of the scanners, and let me say that the problem here in this country is not, we have no scanners, but we have a lot of scammers. That's the main problem in this country, scammers, not scanners we face. And these, the political elite, the politicians here, the ministers of government and so on, who are in touch, who have power, who have office in this case, I believe that the state has been captured by drug lords, by gang leaders, by the heads of major human trafficking cartels. The state has been captured. The government is now under the control of human traffickers, gang lords, drug lords, and persons of this from that illegal industry. And once they capture the government, scanners can never work. Scanners can never come here. I will be shocked if by the end of next year they have 4 or 5 scanners working. It just can't happen, because the government is under the control of a criminal enterprise, and that is a more serious issue. Even at the lower level, I said yes, management is important. I'm reminded, for example, when we were in office in 2015 under the HDC, Ms. Jolene John had purchased 2 pothole paving machines. Now, we actually went through a procurement process with a local distributor, purchased 2 machines, because HDC had 30 or so estates all over with a lot of roads that were also coming into a state of disrepair. We realized that we cannot pave every road, and in HDC estates, the traffic is not as much as a main road, highway, and so on. So we invested in 2 pothole paving machines. Do you know, as soon as we left office, those machines were snatched away by the Ministry of Works under the guise of a national pothole paving program. Today we are told the machines are abandoned. They have gone into a derelict state. They park up somewhere with bush and grass and everything growing all over them. They're not being used. Why? Because pieces of equipment you probably had to change, you probably had to maintain, you probably had to buy new tires, you probably had to get oil and gas, and the government decided we're not using that. So they park up somewhere in the bush rotting rather than being used in certain communities for fixing minor problems with a road. So whether it's the pothole machines, it is the helicopter, it is the scanner, mobile scanners, all, once you give this government an opportunity, they abandon everything. They are just there. The ministers and prime minister are just putting on jacket and tie and sitting down in air-conditioned office and guzzling whiskey and wolfing down shrimps. That's all they do. That's all they do. They're not involved in, rolling up their sleeves and going out. I noticed Mr. Rohanson and wisely, when he's touring Manzanilla, he did not alert the community. Now, if he had made a mistake and allowed people to come out there, trouble he was in. So he's walking on a biscuit called the road with 2 other guys who we don't know who they are, but they are probably his bodyguards. And he's not going to alert the community because whether it's bamboo or beatum, the people are chasing PNM ministers away. And that is because they have lost touch and they simply do not care. They do not care. You saw it in the flooding. The UNC MPs, we congratulate all UNC MPs. They have been on the field in every area, every nook and cranny, providing food, providing water, providing cleaning equipment. The political leader has mandated today that MPs will be on the field. Many of us are leaving to return to the ground to see our constituents. The political leader herself at some time will touch the ground and go to see the people, express compassion, provide whatever help she can provide in the circumstances. You do not see this from the PNM because they simply do not care.
Dr. Moinal, you mentioned the drug trade. In 2020, you asked the Prime Minister if he had concerns with meeting with members of the Maduro regime who were charged with narco trafficking, and the Prime Minister replied that he had no concerns. Do you think that that's indicative that perhaps the government is not taking the issue of narco trafficking seriously?
This government takes no criminal offense seriously. This is why many of them commit criminal offenses. In fact, some commit constitutional violations as well. The Minister of Finance of this country cannot get a decent recommendation from a law-abiding office holder because there are 2 court judgments that speak of his conduct. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have 2 judgments of the court that speak of your conduct, it's hard to get a recommendation. So I don't know how the Minister of Finance could get a passport or anything like that where people have to recommend him, because there are judgments that state otherwise concerning his integrity and character and so on. But those are another matter, other matters. The matter here is that from day one, Rowley has decided that he was ring and finger, hand in glove with individuals from the Venezuelan regime who were targeted internationally by the international law enforcement agencies as being involved in narco trafficking. He has said he had absolutely no problem meeting and treating, eating and drinking and wining and dining with persons linked to international drug trafficking. No wonder the scanners don't work in Trinidad.
MP Padrack, you mentioned TNT's $2 billion debt to NGC. As we know, NGC has some issues of their own with regards to natural gas production. Are you concerned that even though these rates may raise, we may still have an issue of NGC being able to supply the necessary amount of natural gas for electricity production in Trinidad?
Well, over the past few months, we have seen, I think earlier in February of this year, a major power outage. We have seen over the past recent weeks, dips across many communities. This has been linked to production coming out from the independent producers, TGU, etc. So yes, it is a major concern. It is something that we have raised from as early as February last year when we had the first major power outage. government continues to deny that the relationship between NGC in terms of the supply of natural gas to TNTEC is an issue. We do not trust, we do not believe this government because we are seeing the evidence otherwise, that suggests otherwise to us. So yes, it is a concern of ours that NGC may not be able to produce, and it's something that we must be very mindful of. I think there were one or two editorials questioning after these power outages and these dips, asking about that relationship between NGC and TNTEC and NGC's capacity to provide natural gas at the rates that we do need. So it is a concern of ours, but I think what is even more worrying is the secrecy in which it is being treated with. Government has been very silent on answering these questions. There have just been blanket denials from time to time, but nothing cohesive, nothing comprehensive in terms of telling us what is the current production rate and also how much is being utilized by TNTEC in terms of the production of electricity.
With these, if these proposed rate increases were to come about, they will definitely add to the increased cost of living. Are you aware of any study being done by the Ministry of Finance or maybe even TNTEC as to how these proposed rate increases could further add to inflationary pressures, driving up the cost of food or rent and so on?
Well, we do expect that it will contribute in a significant way to inflation because water and electricity are essentials. So I'm not aware that Ministry of Finance or Public Utilities has engaged in this. Dr. Munilal just shared with you that this government is one that just simply does not care. And we are seeing the evidence of that. So for there to be any studies and so on, it will be news to us because the evidence suggests that simply they do not care. They do not care about the average man, woman, and child in this country. We are going into the Christmas period. There is so much frustration and bleakness happening outside here, but there's massive unemployment, massive poverty across the country. There's no hope for Trinidad and Tobago going into the future because instead of government giving the citizens a glimmer of hope in terms of what they can expect in the new year, we're ending the year on high crime, the highest that the murder rate has ever been, and now we are being told that your homes and your pockets will be further affected. You're losing purchasing power, but at the same time, the burden is being placed on you in terms of this increase in water and electricity rates that are to come in the new year. So we are starting 2023 and ending 2022 on a very sour, bad note, while, as Dr. Munilal put it squarely, and I think it really encapsulates the mood of the government in terms of the approach it has taken to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago as really a cruel and evil. There's a sense of evilness coming from the government in terms of their approach to the basic fundamental rights of citizens in terms of a good quality of life here in Trinidad and Tobago, which we had known under the People's Partnership, but which has really come as a thing of the past.
Dr. Munilal, you mentioned the surplus that Minister would mention, the $1 billion surplus. Well, that Minister was saying is a surplus. As of 2021, government debt, excluding open market operations, now stands at $126 billion. Given that our debt is so high, do you think that Minister should refer to this $1 billion as a true surplus?
Well, as MP Parag told us earlier, this is statistical conmanship at its best. You're really trying to fool the population and to deflect attention, as the Express told us, from the issues of the day. To suggest that you save money when you could not, you could not spend money on drainage, on infrastructure. You could not spend money on the schools that need to be completed. You could not spend money on social infrastructure. You deprive people of gate. You deprive, up to now, do you know there are police officers who are being owed monies as overtime, as part of their allowances and so on. They are being owed and they cannot get their money now, policemen and policewomen. So you owe employees of the state, of the government, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in VAT refund to businessmen. You cannot pay that, but you're boasting that you save money. You're boasting. So that is paper safe. Let's begin with that. The country don't know, but that's not money. That is not real money. It's paper money. It's in a book for accounting purposes. So if $12 million is for major river cleaning, and you spend one, you are so incompetent and inefficient that you couldn't get the job done. That 11 on the paper goes in the next column, and you say, I saved $11 million. You didn't save $11 million. You did not spend it on clearing rivers and dredging the river and cleaning the river. That resulted in $100 million damage to property, $100 million in loss in crops, increase in the price of food, which is another issue. You did not cater, because these flooding, we are not putting a monetary value to flooding. But this flooding that we experience now and continue to experience could take a bill up to $1 billion. $1 billion could be lost in terms of productivity. People only think of food, they think of the street, of course, because you see the river. But what about productivity? As soon as the rain set up in Port of Spain, every public servant run home. You are losing productivity. Cars, how much cars we have seen completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. When you add up all of that, it's $1 billion in loss, economic loss. So it is obscene. Let's begin there. It is obscene. It is indecent for Minister Imbert to tell us we save money on the left hand and we squander much more on the right hand.
This week there were strong rumors that Minister Hines would have been removed as Minister of National Security. It turns out that was not. Did the opposition still hold on hope that the minister will remove Minister Hines?
Well, I just want to lead you. Friday, December 2nd, Express newspaper. One rumor that should have been true. This is how the Express, this is a national newspaper. This is not a tabloid coming out every 10 days and thing. This is not social media thing. This is the Express newspaper. One rumor that should have been true. I never thought this country could be united under any issue. There are times when I feel that uniting this country is so hard. But that people had a collective euphemistic spirit of optimism and hope, believing the rumor that Hines has been fired, and then they crashed into despair. There was a collective groan throughout the island when it became clear that it was just a rumor. And Mr. Hines, as if he needed more critical remarks, he went posing on the street and posing in his office, suggesting that he's working very hard, when the murder rate is the highest in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. Highest in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. He's posing in the office. He's posing. He's not by a scanner where they're trying to fix it or to put new equipment. He's not at the customs working out whether or not they can get new staff members and how soon they can do that. He's not there. What he's doing is posing in the office over these, we know them, personal files. All of us serve as ministers of government. When you see files stacked up on a minister building, one file so big has to do with one name, and the minister need to approve 2 weeks vacation or something, and they pose with all those files and say we're working hard. This is image management that people who are con men know about. So Mr. Hines, his departure, I don't know. I just can't say. Dr. Rowley may have pride now that the whole country wants Hines to go, that he will hold back on doing it. But Dr. Rowley has done this country a disservice by keeping Fitzgerald Hines in office.
Those are all the questions we have.
Thank you. Closing remarks.
So let me thank all our viewers, those who have logged on via their devices. I also want to take the opportunity on a much lighter note. Dr. Miller celebrated a milestone on Friday. So Doc, on behalf of your UNC family and all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to take the opportunity to wish you God's blessings, a very happy birthday. You are one that continues to fight for the people of this country, and I know you are much appreciated by those of us who celebrate your bravery, your strength, and your courage.
Thank
so
you.
Happy birthday. Yes.